Good morning. We have with us Professor C.D. Mitra, and we're going to be talking to him about contemporary issues in marketing.
So, marketing today, as we know it, is changing at a much faster pace than, let's say, a couple of decades back. I mean, media like social media and digital marketing are becoming much more relevant than your television, radio, and newspaper. How do you think the marketing challenge is different for the marketer of today or the future as compared to that of the past?
Okay, I'm glad you asked me this question. I fully agree, and though it sounds like a cliche, the world is changing faster than ever before. It affects business, but more than anything else, it affects marketers, because marketers deal with consumers. And I think consumer behaviors, attitudes, and parameters for choice are changing significantly. I think the changing is happening at multiple levels. One is about the level of competition and the level of choice has grown dramatically. We live in a much more hyper-competitive, cluttered world. Consumer attention is something that is becoming very rare and very difficult to get. So marketers have to work much harder, and the situation is very different. Earlier, you had a brand which had a strong proposition. You could create a differentiation and sustain it for a long time. It was easy. Today, to get differentiation is difficult. Getting differentiation at a substantive product level is extremely difficult to sustain. So you need to brand and build relationships at an emotion level. The importance of experience and relationships is becoming much important in building brands and leveraging with consumers. So it's a different set of challenges that you're facing today. The second thing is the rate of change is much faster, which means the kind of theories and the learnings which were relevant 20 years back would probably be still relevant another 5 or 10 years later. But today, what's relevant 5 years back is going to change and will not be relevant 5 years from now, which means marketing practice and marketing theory has to change much faster than ever before. The old textbooks, I'm not saying all of them need to be junked, but we have to be much more selective of which of those old theories will still work and which of them won't, and what new theories need to be created. And that level of needing to look at new practices and theories wasn't there earlier, and the need and urgency wasn't as much. And the third and interesting thing is, of course, the kind of changes which are happening in our own country, and to what extent learning and practice needs to be modified to our own country, which may or may not be similar to what's happening anywhere else in the world.
Right, sir. I mean, like you said, I guess there have been brands in India in the last 5 or 10 years that haven't been seen for, throughout the world. They've been there for a very long time, but they've come to our country only very recently. And the marketing scenario in general is changing. So how do you think the India opportunity is different from the rest of the world?
I'm glad you're mentioning this. I've just come from a conference where a lot of international experts were spending a lot of time thinking and wondering about how the emerging market opportunity is going to play out, specifically in the context of marketing. I think there are 3 unique kind of challenges when we look at emerging markets, and specifically India. One is, I think in India, the rate of change is even faster than what's happening elsewhere in the world, and we know the rate of change is getting faster. One of the reasons is that for a long time, not much changed in India in terms of number of products and brands on offer, consumer behavior and responses, and marketing reaction and responses to that. I think since liberalization, India has been on a fast catch-up mode with the world, and in certain cases, we've actually overtaken the world. So the rate of change is much faster, and you need to adapt to that. Secondly, I think India, in its young demographics, a large part of the world population still at the bottom of the pyramid, poses unique challenges in the kind of consumers we have, and therefore their needs and requirements and behavior, which means the Indian consumer is not typical of the global consumer. There are peculiarities and there are needs for understanding and there are insights about consumer behavior, which are probably true only to India than anywhere else in the world. And the third, which I think is a unique challenge, is the fact that for a long time, it's been either about global brands coming to India or trying to adapt to India, or Indian local brands trying to compete with them or trying to hold on to their old positions. I think the game is going to change in the future, and I do hope so. I think with the global economy's center of gravity shifting eastwards, I think countries like India becoming more and more important, I think there will be an opportunity in the near future for countries like India to actually start building global companies and global brands sitting out of India. Mm-hmm. And how do we meet those challenges is going to be something very interesting and fascinating that teachers and students of marketing need to wonder about.
Right, sir. I'm glad you mentioned that. So how do you think is management education in terms of marketing going to change for a management student who passes out today or in the near future as compared to in the past?
I think completely so. To begin with, we need to understand new theories and practices, some of them which didn't even exist, some of them which are interdisciplinary. For example, there's a huge amount of impact that understanding of neuroscience and behavioral economics, apart from psychology and sociology, is having on consumer behavior and therefore the study of marketing. So we need to understand marketing from many new different dimensions. We also need to understand marketing in terms of changing consumer behavior, which is getting played out in things like social media. Some people have a narrow view of social media as another channel of communication between consumers or between consumers and brands. But it's also something which plays out a much larger range of consumer behavior and attitudes. And that's what marketers need to worry about. And there's both a challenge and an opportunity in how social media is changing and impacting the world of marketing and specifically consumer behavior. So you can have a narrow view and see it as a channel of communication. You can have a broader view and see it something which fundamentally changes consumer behavior. And these are things which are constantly evolving. So one of the interesting challenges of marketing theory and practice is going to be learning, unlearning, relearning on a constant basis. We will be from now on constantly on beta mode. There will be no subject, there will be no theory which will be static. It will be constantly dynamic, and that makes it really fascinating.
Right, sir. So now we know that you take courses on marketing theory and contemporary issues and sports and media marketing here at IIM Calcutta. So how do you think you in particular and IIM Calcutta in general is dealing with this changing learning and teaching paradigm, especially in marketing?
Okay, a very good question, and this is something that I think all of us in IIM Calcutta worry about. I definitely do. And our response till now has been broadly on three lines. One is at content. What do we teach? And why do we teach them? You mentioned two subjects. One is sports, entertainment, and media marketing. Why do we teach that in IIM Calcutta? And probably there are no other business schools in India which teach that subject. It's probably because we identified areas of future opportunities for growth in the Indian context. We've looked at what kind of industries are globally big and in India currently small but have a huge growth potential and which are already showing signs of growing. And these are, for example, three industries where we believe India has a huge growth potential. We also believe some of them, like entertainment and media, are opportunities where India can not only build huge markets, and for that we need trained professionals and domain experts, but we also need people who will be able to take the soft power of India, and I think entertainment and media is very relevant, and help build global brands. Who's saying we cannot have an entertainment brand or a media brand out of India tomorrow, which has a global presence? But to be able to do those, capitalize those kind of opportunities, we need students, we need practitioners who are well versed into the specific understanding and domain and application of marketing into those domains. And that's what we're trying to equip that. So the first part is about creating new content which is relevant in certain domains, which will be extremely important for the future. The second is about who teaches. I think we're trying to bring in increasingly people. For example, this course, sports, entertainment, media marketing, we have a whole lot of absolutely cutting edge practitioners who are part of the course, who come and teach. I'm somebody who also continues to consult and continues to work with the industry. Therefore, I personally have a fair idea of what's going on in the world. Because I think students need to know not just theory, they need to know current cutting edge practice. They need to know what's happening as we speak in the real world. And the third dimension is about how we teach. I think we've moved from the era of push teaching and learning to pull learning, where students will pick up and learn on their own, and there are enough resources on the internet as long as their curiosity is aroused and as long as they've been pointed in the right direction. So I think the job of a teacher today is not just to teach, is to help students learn and direct them in the right direction. And in that extent, I also find it's very fascinating that social media actually becomes a tool for learning. As you probably know that in some of our courses that we teach, including mine, we're actually using things like Facebook to help students learn more and share it in a community platform. So the learning becomes social. And that increases dramatically the scope and opportunity for learning. So rather than there being one teacher, today we have 100 teachers because each student is also a co-creator of knowledge and sharing with everybody else. And that is a very fascinating learning opportunity, including for a teacher like me. And I really love it.
Thanks a lot for your time, Professor.
Yes.